V.I. Lenin. The impending catastrophe and how to combat it. Can we go forward if we fear to advance towards socialism? What has been said so far may easily arouse the following objection on the part of a reader who has been brought up on the current opportunist ideas of the socialist revolutionaries and Mensheviks. Most measures described here, he may say, are already in effect socialist and not democratic measures. This current objection, one that is usually raised, in one form or another, in the bourgeois, socialist revolutionary and Menshevik press, is a reactionary defense of backward capitalism, a defense decked out in a Struvian garb. It seems to say that we are not ripe for socialism, that it is too early to introduce socialism, that our revolution is a bourgeois revolution and therefore we must be the menials of the bourgeoisie. Although the great bourgeois revolutionaries in France 125 years ago made their revolution a great revolution by exercising terror against all oppressors, landowners and capitalists alike. The pseudo-Marxist lackeys of the bourgeoisie, who have been joined by the socialist revolutionaries and who argue in this way, do not understand, as an examination of the theoretical basis of their opinion shows, what imperialism is, what capitalist monopoly is, what the state is, and what revolutionary democracy is. For anyone who understands this is bound to admit that there can be no advance except towards socialism. Everybody talks about imperialism. But imperialism is merely monopoly capitalism. That capitalism in Russia has also become monopoly capitalism is sufficiently attested by the examples of the Prodigal, the Perodemit, the Sugar Syndicate, etc. This sugar syndicate is an object lesson in the way monopoly capitalism develops into state monopoly capitalism. And what is the state? It is an organization of the ruling class, in Germany, for instance, of the Junkers and capitalists. And therefore what the German Plekhanovs, Seidman, Lentz, and others, call wartime socialism is in fact wartime state monopoly capitalism, or, to put it more simply and clearly, wartime penal servitude for the workers and wartime protection for capitalist profits. Now try to substitute for the Junker capitalist state, for the landowner capitalist state, a revolutionary democratic state, that is, a state which in a revolutionary way abolishes all privileges and does not fear to introduce the fullest democracy in a revolutionary way. You will find that, given a really revolutionary democratic state, state monopoly capitalism inevitably and unavoidably implies a step, and more than one step, towards socialism. For if a huge capitalist undertaking becomes a monopoly, it means that it serves the whole nation. If it has become a state monopoly, it means that the state, that is, the armed organization of the population, the workers and peasants above all, provided there is revolutionary democracy, directs the whole undertaking. In whose interest? Either in the interest of the landowners and capitalists, in which case we have not a revolutionary democratic, but a reactionary bureaucratic state, an imperialist republic. Or in the interest of revolutionary democracy, and then it is a step towards socialism. For socialism is merely the next step forward from state capitalist monopoly. Or, in other words, socialism is merely state capitalist monopoly which is made to serve the interests of the whole people and has to that extent ceased to be capitalist monopoly. There is no middle course here. The objective process of development is such that it is impossible to advance from monopolies, and the war has magnified their number, role and importance tenfold, without advancing towards socialism. Either we have to be revolutionary democrats in fact, in which case we must not fear to take steps towards socialism. Or we fear to take steps towards socialism, condemn them in the Plekhanov, Dan or Tronov way, by arguing that our revolution is a bourgeois revolution, that socialism cannot be introduced, etc., in which case we inevitably sink to the level of Kerensky, Milyakov and Kornilev, that is, we in a reactionary bureaucratic way suppress the revolutionary democratic aspirations of the workers and peasants. There is no middle course. And therein lies the fundamental contradiction of our revolution. It is impossible to stand still in history in general, and in wartime in particular. We must either advance or retreat. It is impossible in 20th century Russia, which has won a republic and democracy in a revolutionary way, to go forward without advancing towards socialism, without taking steps towards it, steps conditioned and determined by the level of technology and culture. Large-scale machine production cannot be introduced in peasant agriculture nor abolished in the sugar industry. But to fear to advance means retreating, which the Kerenskys, to the delight of the Milyakovs and Plekhanovs, and with the foolish assistance of the Tsaretellas and Chernovs, are actually doing. The dialectics of history is such that the war, by extraordinarily expediting the transformation of monopoly capitalism into state monopoly capitalism, has thereby extraordinarily advanced mankind towards socialism. Imperialist war is the eve of socialist revolution. And this not only because the horrors of the war give rise to proletarian revolt. No revolt can bring about socialism unless the economic conditions for socialism are ripe, but because state monopoly capitalism is a complete material preparation for socialism, the threshold of socialism, a rung on the ladder of history between which and the rung called socialism there are no intermediate rungs. Our socialist revolutionaries and Mensheviks approach the question of socialism in a doctrinaire way, from the standpoint of a doctrine learnt by heart but poorly understood. They picture socialism as some remote, unknown and dim future. But socialism is now gazing at us from all the windows of modern capitalism. Socialism is outlined directly, practically, by every important measure that constitutes a forward step on the basis of this modern capitalism. What is universal labor conscription? It is a step forward on the basis of modern monopoly capitalism, a step towards the regulation of economic life as a whole, in accordance with a certain general plan, a step towards the economy of national labor and towards the prevention of its senseless wastage by capitalism. In Germany it is the Junkers, landowners, and capitalists who are introducing universal labor conscription, and therefore it inevitably becomes wartime penal servitude for the workers. But take the same institution and think over its significance in a revolutionary democratic state. Universal labor conscription, introduced, regulated and directed by the Soviets of workers, soldiers and peasants' deputies, will still not be socialism, but it will no longer be capitalism. It will be a tremendous step towards socialism, a step from which, if complete democracy is preserved, there can no longer be any retreat back to capitalism, without unparalleled violence being committed against the masses. End of chapter 11.